Good evening and welcome back to Be Rich. Today I have my good friend and auditor Anish Gupta with me, and we had a very interesting piece to discuss. I've been suspecting this for some time, and it has now finally come across. Finally, Japan seems to have turned the corner, at least in the stock market, and the Japanese economy and the Japanese companies seem to be doing well. The Japanese stock market peaked in 1989, and for nearly 34 years, the Japanese stock market has been wallowing, going absolutely nowhere. While the Japanese stock market has stagnated, the US market has become 10 times in size. So those who were in Japanese stock market between 1989 till 2023 have lost a lot of money. There was a lot of corporate governance issue in Japan. Toshiba, which I discussed in this very channel, was a big problem, and there was absolute lack of corporate governance. Shareholders were not treated properly. Shareholder rewards was not considered a big thing, and finally, this led to a toxic condition where shareholders decided to boycott Japanese stocks, and other stock markets were doing very well for a very long time. What happens when a market is ignored for a very long time is that companies conserve capital, all the excesses go down, money raising becomes extremely difficult, capital is scarce, and automatically profits start earning, and over a period of time, companies become very valuable. The first indication that the Japanese market had become very cheap came from Warren Buffett. When he borrowed $20 billion at negligible rates and bought company 5 stocks at 8% dividend yield and did a trade by which the dividend yield would have paid off the loan which he had taken to buy this company. Not only did he do that, he did a visit in Tokyo. He met all these companies and increased his stake to 9.9% in all these 5 companies. And he came to Tokyo with his assistant Abel. Overall, the Japanese market has been in a tear, and in the last 6 months, the Topix has added 13%, the Nikkei has added 16%. It's nowhere near the all time high of 1989, but it is at a 30-year high, which is about 30,000, and the market has not seen 30,000 in 30 years. There are reasons behind this, but will this turn around Japan completely? I do not know. Inflation has finally come to Japan. Wages are going up. People are demanding more. In all these 33 years, what had happened was the companies were paying lesser and lesser, and wages never went up. Japan was running a primarily an export market, so Japanese companies were paying more, earning more, they paid down debt. But the condition of the people in Japan is extremely bad in the sense that Japanese population has been continuously declining, Japanese society has been aging, and there has been absolutely no good news for Japan. Villages have become hollow, and the whole of Japan seems to be living in Tokyo and other big cities. And the Japanese government was forced to bribe people to go and live in villages. Another project which I covered in this channel, and there's nothing positive for any Japanese companies. In 1989, if Japan was at the center of technology, soft-core memories were made in Japan. Japanese electronic giants were dominating the world. Sony, Sanyo, Sharp, Panasonic were all big companies. They were coming up with technology which dominated the world. The handheld camera was first developed by Sony. The Walkman, the Discman, everything was developed by Sony. And suddenly, when the collapse of the market happened, I suppose now looking back through the rearview mirror, the problem was access to capital. The ingenuity of Japanese companies, which started in 1950, vanished, and the companies began to struggle. People used to talk as Japan as the next major power. There was a Plaza Accord in 1987 where the Americans made sure that the yen was controlled, and the Americans believed that the Japanese were manipulating the yen to get a big advantage. But after the bust, all that vanished, and the Japanese economy tanked, and nobody talked of big Japanese companies Sony was an also ran company. Sony did not morph into a digital world. In fact, Steve Jobs said that it was very disappointing that the great Sony disappeared. Sony survived mainly by buying out Columbia Pictures. It became a software company. Its PlayStation was the last big product to win. And when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, it looked like PlayStation would be in serious trouble. Sony has not made any great innovation. It tried hand phones, it didn't work out. They missed the smartphone generation. They tried to get into cameras, but there was no cutting edge technology coming from Japan. And even they seem to have missed the electric car revolution. That Toyota, the world leader, one of the world's largest car companies, went hybrid thinking that people would not like electric cars. The world has moved electric. Tesla and BYD have really changed the face of electric cars. Nobody talks hybrid anymore. The only question is when will the electric wave take over the rest of the world? I have not seen a electric bike from Honda, which is popular in India. What I have seen is electric bikes from China and homegrown Indian brands. Is this all going to change? I have with me my good friend Anish to discuss this. What do you think, Anish?
So there can be plenty of reasons why Japan is in favor. Maybe because of the inflation, now the earnings may start to pick up, and so people are finding that yes, the companies can make more profits, and they can get better returns. Another discussion was since China after the Xi Jinping and Putin how they have started to behave. So people are taking out money from China and investing through in Japan and hoping that Japan will be a safer bet politically but get the advantage of investing as if they are investing in China. So these are the reasons which the article talked about. Inflation was not there in the article, but I think inflation is another reason why the
Yes, inflation has returned to Japan.
because of inflation returning to Japan. So obviously, when inflation returns, the corporates will make more money. When corporates make more money, the valuations or the stock market tends to do well.
But also another thing is the yen remains very cheap.
So the Japanese government, the Japanese central bank is still not raising rates and is allowing to borrow very cheaply. So this is adding more fuel to the fire of inflation. I don't know whether it can get out of control for Japan or inflation can get out of control or will it be at
You know,
these.
Japan will be very happy if inflation goes out of control. It means after 30 years they can increase interest rates.
But there are so the same assumptions the American bankers made that the interest rates will be low for longer and played their treasury and the game.
No, no, but in Japan, what has happened is real estate prices have never gone up. After the bubble burst in 1989, nobody bought any real estate in Tokyo or any place. Real estate is available for free.
No, so I'm not done.
No, no, the primary
So
asset for any banker is land.
no
And
today.
they thought that land is free, land is scarce in Japan, so everybody will buy land, so land is scarce. And that is what set off the boom. The banks got into serious trouble in 1989. If you go back and look at the 1989 bust, I think you must have been 1 or 2 years old. So when the bust happened in 1989, it was a bank failure.
Yes,
So
but
then the banks have been tightly controlled in Japan from 1989.
banks have been controlled. But you in the just a few minutes back, you also discussed how Warren Buffett borrowed at such cheap rates. That means this money is again going to speculation, right? So
Not many were speculating, he was the only one to speculate.
no, there has been a fashion of yen carry trade in
That is
the.
what they did is they bought yen and borrowed in yen and invested in other markets.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. So they borrowed in yen, thinking that the rate of interest will be low. But if Japanese central banker has to increase rates,
That will happen.
then all the asset price calculation will go out of the window.
This is not for Japanese assets. When the yen starts to return, Japanese exports will become very difficult. The value of the yen will appreciate dramatically.
Yes, then how will they pay back?
It is the problem is when the yen is pulled out, It is the assets in the other markets that will sell off, not the
Yes,
Japanese.
but that sell-off will lead to again the cyclical
But I
nature.
think if they allow inflation to go to 5-6% in Japan, I think they have solved the first problem.
But there's a second problem is demographics. How will they?
That is the problem. They should have widespread, large migration should be allowed from Korea and China and other
But
countries.
China is also declining. If you allow from even China, what you will
What
do?
else to do? Because they have to steal from
The
somewhere.
east of the world, that from it is like the sun is moving from first it started in Japan, moving to China. Soon you will have in 20 years peak in India.
But the
So
real
then
problem is
the next peak, I
the
think so.
Japanese youth don't want to work in Japan. I did another program here. The young Japanese find working and studying in Australia cheaper than doing it in Japan. Japan has a huge demographic problem and also has a problem in terms of retaining its people to stay and work in Japan.
When economy does not do well, you don't get better good opportunities. You don't find
So that is
progression.
why this pent up inflation will it push people push salaries to higher so that people will be interested in Japan is something we have to see.
Obviously, everyone will want to work in their home country. Who will not? But if provided they have good opportunity. And no one talks about now the how Carlos Ghosn was kidnapped in.
Nobody is talking about it. That was real bad news.
So that's how the
The
system
Japanese
behaved.
laws was so bad that without a fair trial he was just picked up and thrown into jail.
Yeah, so he had to escape in a.
He had to escape in a piano box.
Yes, so you say, how do you expect international investors to behave if you are going to treat people like this? So why will a Japanese work in a Japanese company if he is going to be taken and put inside without knowing for what he is being taken inside?
And the laws in Japan are like a bit like France, which says that you have to prove you're innocent. Once if you accuse me of doing fraud and the prosecutor is convinced, then you have to go out of the way to convince that I'm innocent.
So Japan has a long way to go, but how will it? Because the Southeast Asia is a declining population.
Entire Southeast Asia is declining.
Southeast Asia is declining. China has stopped, is peaked in during the COVID. The
Much
population
before the COVID, now they have admitted
now their population is dropping. Next is India. Within 10 to 15 years, we will hit
and
the peak.
the Chinese problem is not only is the population dropping and there's a huge migration away from China. People want to leave China, and that's why you have this Bitcoin deal where Bitcoin is more. Whenever Bitcoin surges, you have to see China because people are buying Bitcoin, transferring money outside China and taking it out because there's a huge capital control. But that is also India's problem. If I notice now, I look around, lot of upper middle class and middle class children are leaving the country. The brightest are leaving the country. Even in India, that's a large scale problem. But India, it is you have covered it over because you have endless supply of more people from north.
So the problem in India is because is masked because the labor is still there. You have the labor population still there.
Yes.
Only the skilled labor may be leaving the country.
No, but
So
as the high skilled guys leave the country, like if you go, we went to UAE. Entire UAE is driven on
brain.
Indian brain and Indian skilled labor. And more people are going. If we went to Singapore, every other person is an EP or an yes visa from India. And then there is a large scale migration into Canada. But yes, even if Japan allows free migration, who would like to go to Japan and learn the language is
Yes.
a problem. When you have in Dubai, Singapore, and Canada, which you can speak
So
English,
you can't expect the African to land in Japan and work.
no, you cannot. So that is Japan's biggest problem.
So where will you import people from?
Where will you import people from? Is the biggest problem because the Japanese language is also a problem.
Yes. So like in India, you keep the politicians keep debating about Hindi.
Hmm.
So globally, people should debate on English. So whether other languages will still survive.
No, the other languages will survive.
survive. But if you don't, if the Jap goes to Australia, obviously
He
he
has to
cannot.
learn English.
Yeah, so
So English will be the link language.
English will be the language. So the globally, whoever whichever language is spoken the most or used the most is going to survive. Russian, China, because they are not growing, right? So
The
China
language is a
has
problem.
China has developed so far, but you don't see people going to work in China.
No, you don't.
So if China had adopted better policies, right? You would have seen people moving to China to
You
work.
have some Indians living in China.
But that is due to trade and
That is due
business.
to trade and business.
You don't have
No,
people
no, no.
going.
It's not like Singapore and UAE. No.
They don't want a Chinese passport and don't want to settle and buy
No, no, no.
bungalows in
No, no, no.
Beijing or
No, no.
Shanghai.
They want to buy bungalows in UAE. They'll buy condominiums in Singapore, properties in Australia, but not in
China.
China. That I
So
agree.
so how does that's what is happening. You will have Englishization of the world.
But that is one thing, but what you say is true. Japan is doing a lot. It's buying back stock. It is doing a great. But the primary concern is how will it navigate inflation in the short term, and the long term, how will it set its demographics right?
Yes, but if inflation keeps going and they don't cut, maybe more people leave Japan because it will become unviable to live. Tokyo is already the costliest place in the world to live.
So inflation and demographics, how Japan tackles that problem will solve the problem. But anyway, it's a very interesting thing that Japan's markets are moving up. Maybe they will hit an all-time high, but the fundamental problems of Japan remain. It's very welcome relief that inflation has come, but how far is it needed? When does the central bank clamp on inflation is problem number one, and problem number two is of course demographics. Thank you for watching Beeraj. If you like this content, hit the like button of this video, turn on the bell notification. If you have already done so, kindly send this video to your friends and relatives to ask them to take a look. Once again, I thank you for your support for Beeraj. We had a meeting in Singapore. I was very pleased with the results. Indians received me with great love and affection, and I enjoyed my time in Singapore. The meeting was a big success, and I could meet up people from various walks of life. I miss going to Kuala Lumpur, which is very close to Singapore, just 4 hours drive, and I have been asked to come there. So, my team decided on the 11th of June, Sunday, we would do an event in Kuala Lumpur. If you would like to meet me in Kuala Lumpur, kindly send a message at the WhatsApp number given below and or drop a mail to the mail ID given below. My team would contact you at earliest. Once again, I thank you for your support for Beeraj. It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to brechenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.